Welcome to the LiveCast Conversations With. On this show, my guests and I explore the bumps and triumphs of their journey to extract the gems from their experiences, because success leaves clues, and today we turn those clues into billboards for you. I'm your host, Gene Bernier, founder of Pealed Back, speaker and co-active coach, guiding leaders to ruthlessly pursue a life worth living. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 95 of the LiveCast Conversations With. This one is pre-recorded to make sure that we can get this great guest on today. Our guest today is Neil Pretty. He is the CEO of Aristotle Performance and the 2020 Vancouver Top 100 Innovator. Neil and his team have helped clients across 6 continents and multiple industries to build high psychological safety, learning, and accountability. They focus on innovative, scalable experiences for leaders and team development while building organizational capacity that has resulted in their clients developing higher performance, adaptability, and belonging. Through creating experiences that embody psychological safety and elevate the lives of individuals while driving business goals is what fills each day and feeds his curiosity. Neil, sir, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for pre-recording this too. I didn't realize I was such an important figure.
Wow.
The honor of being pre-recorded.
That's the beauty of the technology, is like we can adapt to get great guests, to have a great conversation. I'm almost willing to do anything. Some of you may not know, Neil's been on the show once before.
Don't go back and look though.
Please don't.
Yeah, that's right.
We will slice some gems out of that later on.
I'm sure you'll have something in there.
That was episode 3, and I like watching it just for a little bit before this recording got started. I'm like, oh wow, this has come a long way. Like, that was back on Zoom. There was no production, no good mics. It was just going, hey Neil, do you want to be on my show that I'm trying to start? And you're like, sure man, we're gonna meet every week anyways.
Sign me up. Absolutely. Well, I love that it's evolved. I love that it continues, and I love that this now has the ruthless pursuit as part of it. That's a continued evolution for you, which is wonderful.
Yeah, it's this is what this place has all been about. Like, I looking back and thinking back to our conversations back then, like that was October 2020. Like, we were still like thinking it's only like 2 more weeks and we're through all this, right?
Yeah, well, the optimists were right. Those who can do, exponential math were like, oh no.
We're here for a while.
Yeah, I better settle in. I mean, I think we were also, the two of us in particular were so busy building businesses, building things, it's like I didn't have time to talk to people about pandemic, and I was actually grateful for it. I'm like, oh, this is great. I have no reason to leave my office ever. Which of course
was a good and bad thing sometimes, if I remember some of our conversations. But it was interesting to look back because it was so early. Like, both of us had basically in March were trying to start something new. World fell apart, and by then we were 6 months into it. In that episode, we were talking about celebrating some successes, because there'd been a lot of it's hard starting a business, and especially when one about that's helping business. So maybe let's share a little bit about your journey, because it's been a hell of a journey over the last 24 months for you.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because at that time we'd started our business, and we were just trying to get any kind of traction anywhere. And you mentioned doing the live cast and being just on Zoom and things like that. And it's like when you first start, the goal is to produce as much as you can, and whether it's crap or not is completely irrelevant. The goal is to just produce as much as you can and learn from that as much as you can. And at that time we were just like, we weren't ducks on the water with our legs going. We were, full scramble trying to make anything happen. Yeah. And, we ended up doing certifications for the Fearless organization and developing a model around that. And we really evolved that program and really took ownership of that program. And that became sort of a keystone of what we were doing. And then we're going, this, and that learning mindset really persisted. And I think that's been the biggest thing that ended up defining our success over the last couple of years, was our capacity to learn and relearn and rethink and let go of what we thought we knew. And like that capacity to be wrong was such a gift. And you can't buy that. You have to earn that. You earn those stripes in your life, and you can't get educated on that. Not really. You have to embody that and see it give you wins throughout. And so we stuck with that, and ended up, we're at a point now where we work with several large global corporates, implementing facilitator training, so organizations have the internal capacity to nurture team relationships, leadership development. We have a new leadership program coming out this year, to help engage leaders and drive leaders. We have several new products coming out that are oriented around long tail learning initiatives, trying to embed those practices in organizations. We've worked with teams all over the place. One day I'll get Antarctica. And it's just like, like maybe I'll do a team development session with penguins, but it's really like, how do we scale ourselves? How do we scale mindset? How do we scale the training and coaching of leaders so that they create the kinds of environments that people want to work in? Yeah. And we hustled and really laid a foundation for us to work with all these organizations. And for me, it's like, the greatest honor in my life, to some degree, and terrifying all the time, because we're always paying ourselves as little as possible so we can invest back in the business, all that kind of stuff, and to some degree have the pandemic to thank for it, because we wouldn't have had the opportunity or the push towards psychological safety that we would have had without it. And trying to make lemonade out of lemons. I think that's I always said my true gift to the world is being able to make lemonade out of lemons. So here I am.
Constantly squeezing, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, there's so many places to dive into that, but I think the one that really speaks to me is like this concept of like learning, right? You talked about like the earning stripes around the failure and getting into that.
Yeah.
What is your definition of learning now after these last 18 months of like going through the hard stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think the definition of learning is to develop new understanding. And I think what, it's knowledge is nothing without understanding. It's just information if you don't have that. So I think that's where I land on that, is new understanding. So to create spaces and opportunities for new understanding, you have to be willing to see and experience what you haven't previously seen and experienced. So to some degree, learning is great, new understanding, great, yada, 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 but you have to be, to some degree, decoupled from your past self, from your id and ego.
Yeah.
You have to decouple these things and start considering, how can you, extend yourself into domains that are unfamiliar, because that is where growth happens. That's where learning happens. So to develop new understanding it's uncomfortable.
100%, right? And I would say, that is, when you're speaking to that, like all I hear is inside of me is my ego screaming, no, right?
Yeah.
So how was that coming to terms with having kind of the dance with your ego, right? Because as somebody who's accomplished a lot going into this, when you go into that unknown, be like, well, the part of the unknown is that you're not good at it, and that like makes you want to like squeal if you've been really good at accomplishing up until now.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those things where people talk about imposter syndromes and things like that, and it's like, I've said this to clients, I've said this to myself, the nights when I'm crying myself into my pillow, it's like your imposter syndrome is a good thing.
Yeah.
Thank goodness you have it, because if you didn't, you'd be a narcissistic sociopath. So you're welcome. And it's like, okay, so if I've got a bit of that, that means that I'm doing new stuff. The problem is when it gets to a point where it's like, and you're a shitty person,
Oof.
and you're a crappy person, and you're less than. It's when it reaches that level that it's then unproductive or toxic or a negative. But up to then, it's a guide. Hey, you're doing something new here. This is good. There's something that you can extract from these experiences, incorporate it into your life, into your work, and push it back out, after synthesizing that learning and create impact as a result of it. And I think it's, wanting to be safe, not in the sense of your whole self, but in the sense of ease. Easy is, it's ultimately, to some degree, unproductive, even though we need those moments of ease to recover.
Right. And like coming to terms, I like that idea of like, it's in that similar place where I've gotten with when that little voice, we call imposter syndrome, saboteur, whatever, but there's usually that thing going, learn to like look at this now and go, what are you trying to keep me safe from right now?
Yeah.
And that kind of sounds like where you've come to terms with it as well a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's this like fantasy that we have that we think people will think we're stupid, and we think people, oh well, if I do this, people will think I'm smart.
Yeah,
it's like people aren't thinking about you at all.
No,
like you're spending all this time thinking about what other people think. People don't think about you. They don't care.
They're too wrapped up in their own world as it is. And it's interesting you say that. Is like recently in a conversation somebody shared like back in the past, like their I think mother or grandmother would be like, well, what are the neighbors going to think? And they lived out on a farm, like they didn't even like their neighbors, but like that was like the driving factor of like, what would somebody else think? And how that just shapes your I call it limiting belief, but it's like almost like, okay, well, here's the box, and you're gonna have to get outside of the box to be like, did anybody like actually care?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a big component of this is like, the people that care about who you are. You do.
Yeah.
They're not the people that show up when you're down. They're the people that show up when you're winning.
Yeah.
They're the people that show up when you win and when you're down. When things are going right, they're there to celebrate you and not extract from you.
Yeah.
When you're down, they're there to help prop you up instead of berate or demean you.
Yeah.
Like it's really clear who the people are that you care about, and those people do think about you, and they do matter. And I think that's what we're stuck in now, is this sort of continuum where we've mixed up, I should say, who we think cares about us and who we put our mental energy around. So I think there's some component of that, and I think it's connected to this idea of the individual, and I'll draw this back to both your comment about neighbors and failure, if I can try. The concept of individualism was it's a French word that was initially attached to a negative, which was intended to mean someone who no longer contributed to their community.
Right.
It was oriented towards someone who was selfish, and then that switched, largely around the Americanization of individualism, and that at the core started asking us, are you a success or are you a failure? Are you worthy of our love or are you not?
Yeah.
And I think that is at the root of people's lack of capacity to learn and interact in ways that engage them in new understanding, because most people are thinking with a mindset of, I am a failure, not I made a failure. And the result of that was I got to learn.
Yes.
And that mental switch is the one that we really work to bring to people. Because especially as a leader, if you're able to model the behavior, create the conditions of examining and being curious about failures, mistakes, errors, opportunities to do different or better or try new things, if you're able to model that as a human being and in your work, people see that and they intuit that and they go, oh, they're separating me, the person, the human being that matters regardless of what I do, from the work. And now we can solution and talk about the work together in a completely new way. And that comes from leadership, and that comes from that idea of separating failure from I am to I made. And I think that's this really critical piece of learning that people often miss out on.
Yeah, just adding those extra 2 letters and to saying I made a mistake, or I made a learning opportunity, I made a success with the team, or I made something cool and I want to share it. Be like that it is interesting to play on that, because you're right, like, so a lot of the times when we hear that little inner voice, it's going, you are, be like, no, stop being so mean. Don't personalize this. You're being a dick, and there's no reason for this self.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I completely agree, and I think that by no means do I not have those voices that question, what are you doing? You know, and I think it's coming to peace with and coming to terms with those inner monologues that would see us be small.
Yeah.
And reframing those, and that's why leadership, for example, is a practice. Yeah. Really, it's a practice of navigating yourself and navigating the systems you interact with. It's a tough job.
Well, and I think it's like you talked about modeling, right? And this idea of like it's caught, not taught, keeps coming up in a lot of things. Is like, what's your team going to watch? Especially speak from like a business team component. Be like, your team is going to do the things that you're modeling, regardless if you're like, take your breaks, do your things. And if you're the person that's not doing any of that, well, they're going to pick up on that going, oh, well, if he can't do it, we can't do that either. Right. Yeah. What happens when you step, like you're saying, you step into this place of going, who would I be if I'm not afraid? Right. So my last guest, actually on episode 94, this is a question that he's been driving himself around for 30 years, or is going, who would I be if I'm not afraid?
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting question. And I think that resonates with me for several reasons. One of them being that this journey for me was a journey of, how far could I go if I took the shackles off? Yeah. And that has nothing to do with not being afraid. It has everything to do with doing it anyways. And that's the call to action, because you don't eliminate fear. Yeah. You choose how you respond to it.
I think that's a really powerful point to be made there too, right? And like, I like that imagery of the shackles. And most of the time, when you feel like you've got those shackles on, they're actually not locked. You just like drape them over yourself at some point, going, oh, well, I'm stuck to it like a dog. You can chain up a dog and actually not clip the other end, and they won't go beyond their reach.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's funny. There's 2 directions in my mind that I'd like to go in. And I guess to some degree they're connected as well, in that as leaders, we see this all the time, where leaders, I'll give you a perfect example. So a team that is burning up, what is the leader's response? Often they really care about their people, so they work harder. They work more. Don't worry, I got it. They'll take on more. They'll take on more. I got this. I do these meetings, and they're working tons of overtime and all this sort of stuff. But what their people are seeing is them never taking a break. Yeah. So the thing they're trying to do is help their people, and the thing they're doing is showing their people that they shouldn't care for themselves.
Yeah.
So you have this counterintuitive response to a leader who cares, and those people might refer to that leader as a toxic person who's guiding them towards this work style that's burning them out. And it's like, that's not the case at all. That person is actually their intention and their impact don't align. And that's a lot of the work that we do as well is as leaders, does your intention and your impact align with the people you're working with? Because more often than not, it actually doesn't align. And that's where the challenges and problems lie. And I think for leaders on the other side of that, when they fail, these shackles come out.
Yeah.
And I think we've talked about this, separately on the past about, the difference between guilt and shame in my mind is that guilt is a trespass that we see as forgivable, and shame is a trespass that we see as unforgivable. Yeah. But the person who we look for for relief from that shame is from the outside, but it's ourselves that have put that
shame there,
that on our shoulders and not letting it go. So we have to look for forgiveness from within to move forward. And I think often a lot of these leadership challenges come from a place of pain, come from a place of shame or inattention and things like that. It's often a very challenging transition to leadership. Leadership's a whole thing. People take it on because it's a status shift for them.
Yeah.
And there's not a whole lot of other ways to get a status shift in our society. And you don't get rewarded very well for it. You get rewarded for doing sales, for example. So it's a tough task. Leadership's no easy feat. And it's a journey of self-awareness and discovery, and then converting that into learning and putting it into action.
Yeah, right. I hear this like intention and impact. It's like intention in, impact out. Is like understanding how that formula works and really bringing that conversation to light around it. And the idea of like that example you share of the boss who's like working himself into an early grave is like the other flip of that coin is they're going to feel like he can't trust them. Be like, oh, you can't trust me to do this meeting, or you're taking this work from me? What else is that saying about me? Well, now I'm just going to take some steps back because you're just going to do it and I don't have to? Great.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that as you know, prior to starting Aristotle Performance, I did leadership development and stuff like that as a solo practitioner. And leading into psychological safety and team development and stuff like that. And the self-awareness is only, or self-development is only as good as the quality of the mirror you hold up.
Oh, there's the mic drop moment right there.
Right. But the problem is that we put shame in front of that.
It's like a curtain.
We put all these things in front of the mirror.
Yeah.
That causes the reflection to not be very good either.
Yeah, and it's like you walk into a fun house, right? Like that idea of the mirrors and the reflections and what you're seeing and trying to distort yourself to be like, how can I make this distortion look balanced while you're taking yourself completely and totally out of your own harmony within your value. So I think that's a really interesting concept for people to think about too. Is like, well, everyone's mirror that's reflecting you is a component of who they are, and as such, they're only seeing a piece of you. So there's that mirror is always going to be distorted. How can you look at that and go, oh, is that what I look like? Well, it's what you look like to them, but what's the truth within it?
Yeah, and I think to connect this back to learning, this is one of the reasons why people would rather repeat the mistake than learn from it. More often than not.
I'm laughing because I feel personally attacked right now. Neil.
I'm sitting there all the time. I was happy to repeat too. It's like, you're sitting there distorting the truth.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things to think about is like hindsight's 20/20. So then we beat ourselves up for making a decision that was terrible.
Yeah.
It's like, but you didn't have this information then. So like, you can't say you were stupid or foolish or unwise back then. If you went back, you would make the same decision.
Yeah.
So the question isn't, are you bad? It's, did you learn?
Yeah. And if you take that and still make the same decision, well, then you're not learning. Then maybe it's okay to be like, well, what the hell's going on here? Like, you keep doing the same thing. You're getting different data points every time you do it, and you're not adjusting your intention to and how you're delivering on that impact. Be like, now this is a big conversation about what are you really seeing? Yeah.
And I put a post up on LinkedIn the other day about values-based leadership. And there was a little bit of interaction. It wasn't like this post that got a ton of engagement or anything like that, but it's something I've been thinking about a lot. Where like my number one value is exponential impact. If I think an activity is going to have some exponential outcome, I'll engage with it, right? And that's something that I orient myself towards. Okay, so how does that impact my leadership? Okay, well, as soon as I think someone's ready to be sort of without me, for example, it's like, go do without me. I want to be redundant, because if I'm redundant, that means that I can elevate more people. I can do that. And sometimes it's to the point where it's like too soon. Not that they're not capable, but because I didn't do a good job of setting them up for success.
Right.
That's more likely the case. And I think that these situations where we're driven by values, I'm driven by values, so is everyone else.
Yeah.
But they might not be aware of those values. Those might be shadow values that they don't want to face.
Right.
And they might be motivating factors that we don't agree with. So-and-so, like I have a close friend of mine, his number one value is making money. And like, amen. And that comes first over his family. And they know that. It's like, it's talked about. They're aware of it. It's a thing. It's an agreement that they have. And so many people would chastise that. And yet he's living a life that he feels is valuable.
Yeah.
And he creates amazingly positive impact in the world as a result of that. It really does, because he does good work serving people to accomplish that goal.
Yeah.
But some people would judge him negatively.
And to that is like, I think the value in that there is seeing that he's able to understand his values, right? Like, because like you say so many times, all of our actions and everything we do are a result of an underlying set of like principles and values. Even if we haven't done the work to go discover what those are, to really understand it, everything's always pointing back to it, right? So for him to be able to be like, hey, this is the thing that drives me. I get up in the morning, my feet hit the ground, I'm excited because I'm going to go make money. And to hold that conversation, to build the agreements, and I imagine there's other values that come within that to support all sections of his life.
Oh, yeah.
But him and his family and probably his team all come to that place of going, okay, how do we align these values versus how do we align these things, right? That's a powerful place.
Yeah, well, and I think it's this consciousness, taking the implicit and making it explicit, inevitably draws you into a conversation around what really drives you.
Yeah.
What really motivates you. And those can be really, really uncomfortable realizations where you're like, oh, shit, this is the thing. And then having to reconcile that. And I think that's where, when people who have those kinds of realizations about themselves are also the ones that can do the work around separating failure from themselves.
Right.
Can start looking at themselves and go, well, what is financial freedom to me? You start answering that question. What is financial freedom to you?
Yeah.
Is it that you don't want to work at 45? Okay, are you really motivated by that, or does that just make you sound cool in conversation?
Right there's that's that difference.
People, right, don't get it.
Yeah.
Most people would rather say that than be a victim.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, so what's the motivating factor? Okay, well, the motivating factor is actually to engage in things that get you love from people, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's like, if this is how you got taught how to get love, then that's going to likely be your motivator.
Yeah. That's really. I think that's another one of those mic drop moments within this, Neil, is getting beyond that, that those stated goal, like the difference between like a goal and like that motivation, that principle, those values, right? Like saying that, oh, I want to retire by 45. What did you do today to move towards that?
Yeah. Nothing.
Be like, well, then is that what you really want? Or do you want, like you say, the accolades? Like, what is the thing from that is filling you? Yeah. And that's that question, and diving into that. And where I think it's interesting is I guarantee, because I'm one of them, who've been in the place being, well, I've accomplished a lot. I'm a great doer. My goals are all like doing focused. And then you have
Right.
like this little glimpse of awareness and you're like, why am I doing all this? And that's usually where that question starts. And then the rabbit hole starts to dig. But like, what is beyond the doing? Where's the being at it, right? And the being, all of a sudden, when you start to uncrack that nut and start to find out what's in there, I find like all the doing just like amplifies and it's bright and you're like, oh, it
Yeah.
makes sense now. And now all of a sudden you're saying yes to the things that directly mean something to you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's something that I know we've talked about in the past too. But like, there's nothing more powerful than an empowered no.
Yeah.
You know, I made one yesterday, and it was like, this is a no,
Yeah.
and this is a no because it's meaningful to say no, because there's a lot more at stake here than just me. You know, just what I want, just money. You know, it's like, for me to say yes, this would have to be about money only.
Right.
You know, and it would have been a decision that was incongruent with my values.
Yeah.
But knowing that allows you to make decisions, and I think, you know, it's one of the things where you know, engaged with a company and they're talking about their purpose statement and stuff like that, and it's like, a good purpose statement should solve problems. You know, what are we doing here? Why are we here? Well, I have this decision to make. Well, why I'm here helps decide that.
Yeah.
You know, and to me, it's possible to get to a point where you can really assess your day, you know, hour by hour. Are these the things that are leading you towards a life that you feel is valuable? Not me, you, but your life.
Yeah. How do you define that? And that is unique. Like, it's like a snowflake. We all have that in there. We have that infrastructure within us. But what it means, well, that's up for us to define and to understand. I would pull back the word define. I think it's more find, right?
Yeah.
Because they're already in there. And most of the times they're layered pretty deep under a bunch of stuff. We have to go digging for them.
Well, and ironically, I would pull back the word snowflake.
Fingerprint, maybe?
Fingerprint, maybe? Well, I think because, and you know, maybe riff with me here a little bit, but it's like, you know, if you actually realize how unique you are, it doesn't make you weak like a snowflake, easy to melt.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
It makes you strong. You know, your self-integrity becomes your armor. You don't need to armor up in the Brene Brown sense, where you're trying to protect yourself. It's like, you just become you and live as that.
Yes.
And what becomes the affronting moments in your life become the spaces where you can't be that. And then you work to summarily reject those spaces from life.
Well, yeah, I do like that, right? And this idea of not having to armor up because you're just you. You're coming from this place of like, I don't need to defend who I am because this is who I'm being. Like, if I'm being me, I'm saying yes to the right things, no to the right things as well. Be damned the criticism or the scorn. Be like, it's not about that. You know, now I'm also like caveating, be like, you're a basically decent human being that isn't on some sort of horrible spectrum that makes you a monster.
Well, I hope not.
Right? And so it's just like, well, if you're coming from that place and you're at peace with it and it resonates really highly, be like, well, then, yeah, that's going to flow out from everywhere. And all of a sudden it's just like, oh, yeah, you felt like you had to defend that yes or no. Be like, no, I choose it because I know how I chose it. And I don't need to explain it.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I think that's like that's where I think about that armor coming down. It's just like, I don't need to explain it.
Yeah, you just don't need it. But, you know, and as you were talking, I was thinking about Elon Musk's email. Right? Yeah. And I mean, the response to that, I think, is fascinating. Because he's putting a line in the sand. He's just saying this is what is.
Yeah.
He knows what he is. He knows what his companies want to look like. And he knows what he wants his people to be like. And the real challenge, the shackles of agency, is that you have a responsibility to it. If you don't like that, quit. And that's what he's telling people. You don't like this, quit. I want people here that do like this. I want people that know that this is a thing that they like.
Oof.
And, the challenge, what's challenged people is that it's these saying, please leave.
Yeah.
And you over there, please stay, because we have aligned values.
Yeah.
And do I like his delivery? Not necessarily. Is it something I would do? Not necessarily. No. Is it a policy I agree with? To be honest with you, absolutely not. But that's not the point. The point is that he's put a line in the sand and said, this is what is for me and for this company. Yeah. And people who don't like it and stay aren't enacting their agency. They aren't engaging in choice. And I think that's the real shackles of agency, is knowing that you have the opportunity to change and do different and not doing it.
That hits, right? Well, and within it, there's that agency of like taking responsibility for your choice, because at the end of the day, be like, it's no right to work any place at all. Be like, it is still a choice, and it's an agreement of choices between multiple parties. And where else was I going to go with this? The other part is like being able to hold the space for going, I see what he's doing, and I understand that this is his value. Is it mine? Would it be a no for me? It would be a no for me. Is the delivery? But his deliveries are. But he's always showing up that same way.
Yeah.
So then you get to have that choice of going, oh, that is how I like to operate, or that's not how I like to operate.
Yeah.
Make a choice from there.
Yeah, like you didn't go become a nurse. You didn't go join the military. You didn't go do a whole myriad of other things, including try to work with Elon Musk. Yeah. And like those are all fine decisions, and there are other places where you can work and engage and it's I read this quote the other day, you rather choose discipline, choose the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. Oof. Oh. And I was reading that and I'm like, son of a yeah, me too. and I think this is these are these cases too, where like we do have a lot more choice than we think we do. I mean, the Stoics used to choose to live with nothing so they could appreciate just the essence of being alive. Yeah. Monks choose to live with nothing so they can convene more directly with God and or Buddha or whatever the monks are oriented towards, shedding of the material world for the purpose of connection. Yeah. You don't need anything. There is nothing that's certain. So how much do you choose to engage with all those things that aren't real or aren't certain?
Yes. And holding into that super philosophical. But as well within that, there's like that capacity for dealing with the discomfort of that reality. Yeah. Yeah. Without having to go like, oh, I'm going to judge, or I'm going to be like, oh, we're here and we're separate. What do we do? Well, we can make a choice to go our own ways. We can make a choice to engage and find the win-win, or educate each other and be like, oh, we're actually closer than we thought. Like there's so much to do with it, but the only way to go through that is to stand in that discomfort of going, dude, I don't like how that was delivered, but I appreciate what the stance that you have. Okay, so what can we do from here?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of the challenges, particularly in the pandemic, is that, fear makes us myopic. Fear, to some degree, makes us kind of stupid. Yeah. It strips us of our higher thinking. So when we are faced with complex situations, we would rather they were at very least complicated, or at very most complicated instead of complex, and we would rather they were just easy. Yeah. And I think that's why also a lot of people don't engage in learning, because it's not easy. It's not comfortable. We talk about psychological safety and trying to build learning environments for high performance and stuff. It's like, this is not comfortable. You really want that? Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. It's the most uh, in particular in the last few years or last couple of years, like I hate weekends. Hate weekends. Today's a Friday afternoon. I'm just like, I gotta not work. All I want to do is work, not because I'm an alcoholic, because I really, really love what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's all I want to engage in, and it's a learning environment, and a lot of that time is uncomfortable. And when you're doing the thing that engages you, discomfort is, you're okay with that. You're okay with learning. But we end up in these situations where we'd rather it was easy. But then if we have discipline or regret, you gotta live with either of them.
It always comes down to that consequence, right?
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want, but then you got to live with what happens next.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's something I say. I still keep a small collection of one-on-one clients, and I often say, it's not an act of. There's no such thing as balance. It's an act of rebalancing all the time.
Yeah.
And certainly my life. I've built a company that I'm proud of, and we're growing, and all this wonderful stuff, and top 100 Innovator, and all this cool stuff. And it's like, and I blew out my back in the process. I often don't sleep at night, because I'm thinking a lot. I got a lot to think about, and that's not easy on me. That's not easy on my family. I'm not. When you're driven like that, it's not easy. Yeah. So, do you want to be an entrepreneur? Do you want to be a CEO? Do you want to be financially free? Because if you're not willing to downgrade your life in some domain and be out of balance in one domain, you're never going to create something that's out of balance in another way.
Yeah, right. I like that. I always go back to harmony as well when it comes to balance, especially with my clients. It's just like, you're never going to achieve balance. Balance is a fool's errand. But understand that the harmony and different notes and different parts of that song are going to play louder and be more prominent at different pieces of it, right? So it's got to tell the story, and if it was all the same, all balanced out, that'd be a pretty boring song.
Well, what I love about that is that when everybody's in harmony, nobody's actually on key. Yeah. It's not all people singing at 444 hertz.
Yeah.
Consistently. It's like everybody's off just a little bit, and it's like that resonance creates something more than the individual voices you carry. Yeah. That's why we called our company Aristotle Performance. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
I'm more than because of the people that I surround myself with, and them too.
Right. Well, dude, we've just blown past the 40-minute mark, and I want to be respectful of your time. I knew we were going to blow by it.
Always.
That is not a shocker here, but this was a great conversation. I'm really grateful that you were able to jump in and do episode 95 today. So before I get to my last question, this is an opportunity to give a shout out. So you've mentioned Aristotle Performance. How can people find you? The links are down below, but let's give a little shout out to what you're doing, and it's an opportunity to brag a little bit.
Oh, sure. AristotlePerformance.com. You can contact us. There's case studies on there, but there's also our Fearless Leader program is open for applications. We're doing that. Our hope is to have lots of people in that this fall, but we got to apply, and we want people to apply, and we want to make sure that it's a group of people that are committed. Right. And you can see some of the clients that we've worked with there. Yeah, we do it all. Team development, leader development, organizational development, and everything in between. All with the purpose of creating the kind of work spaces that people want to go home from feeling better than when they arrived. Yes. Instead of the other way around. And for business to benefit from that too. And everybody's got to win. So
that's great mission, my friend. As well, I've heard you mention LinkedIn, so people can find you at Neil-Pretty on LinkedIn too, if they want to keep up to date with your musings as well.
Yeah, that's more or less what I do on there. Periodically, I'll have some kind of brain fart that sounds like it'll.
This will play. I better type this out right away.
Oh yeah. Oh, that seemed like a pretty good idea. Oh, nobody liked that. Never mind.
And right back to the imposter shows.
That's right. Oh, maybe I am a student. Yeah, absolutely. I love for people to connect with me on LinkedIn, and always, I'm always up for a good conversation, and that's something that I often sort of finish these kinds of conversations with is that everything in life is a series of conversations. Mm-hmm. And if you ever doubt that, the greatest outcome of a conversation was your birth. Ooh. So conversation are the things, the lack of conversation or the conversations that we've had are really the things that make up our life. So, and there's nothing more real than this moment. So I appreciate it.
Appreciate you. All right, so last question I ask everybody. So we're going to jump into my time machine. We're going to go ahead into the future by 10 years. When we kick that door open, we're going to meet older Neil.
Oh, God.
Damn it! so what's the one thing he's going to say thank you for?
What's the one thing he's going to say thank you for? Having the guts to say yes to myself. People say yes to everyone else, but they'll say no to themselves. And a few years ago, that was put in front of me. And now I've realized what's possible if I say yes to myself, warts and all. It is that there's potential to take all the experiences I've had and do good things in the world that I'm proud to stand behind, and that continues, And 10 years from now, I'll never regret that decision.
I love that answer. Thank you very much for sharing that answer. Neil, thank you for being the guest today. And everybody else, thank you for watching. This is the LiveCast Conversations With, and we will see you next Wednesday.